Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to Randomly Relaxing. Today, I want to help you get rich while relaxing. So, there are probably millions of people out there who sell books, sell advice, sell stock tips, sell information on how to make money. And it's easy to get overwhelmed by all that and to think that there's something very complicated about obtaining wealth. And there are some complicated investment vehicles, financial tools, etc. on the marketplace that, if you have the desire and the will and the resources to learn about and to explore and utilize, they may provide some opportunity for you. But I think the vast majority of people, maybe like 75, 85, maybe even 90 to 95% of people, don't really need that level of complication and or, would not get the return on their time and energy in learning about those kinds of things sufficiently to utilize them safely. So what then does the average person do in order to obtain wealth and to build for themselves a financial nest egg that will provide for them and allow them to do things like purchase a home, retire when they want to retire, live the kind of life that they live? And I don't have the answer to that question for every person, but I do think that I have learned over the years, and I'm in, my mid-40s, so I've been around a while, and I've, been through stages of one's life that occur before that time, like going through college, getting, your first real job, being kind of at the sort of apex of your career within the industry in which you operate, and now, sort of gliding towards retirement. So, I've learned some things by mistakes that I've made, and that's really I think the approach I take here. If a person asks me, what should I be doing financially? If they're assuming they're at a place where they're, younger than I am now, I can tell them, well, here's some things that I wish I had known when I was your age and in your position. And I think I would be doing a lot better than I am now if I had known those things. So that's all I hope to do here, is just to share with you all some ideas for thinking about money and, how to build your wealth to the greatest extent you can within reason, based on some pretty, fundamental, widely accepted principles that aren't, controversial, really. And maybe they're not surprising to you, and you'll say, well, gee whiz, I knew all that. I didn't really learn anything. That's okay. Hopefully you can relax and, agree with what you're hearing. If you disagree, great. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. So, first thing I want to talk about is the um, historical rates of return for the U.S. stock market. The numbers I'm going to show you here, I think, are for the S&P 500, which is an index of funds that is intended to represent a certain diversity of the stock market within a select group of companies that is chosen by Standard & Poor's. So it's a little bit different than the global, or the national, the U.S. stock market, but we'll sort of call this the stock market for purposes of this discussion. And what you have here, these numbers, are just the average yearly rate of return for the market over different periods of time. So from the 5 years from 2017 to 2021, the average rate of return was 18.55% per year. So if you had invested $1 on January 1, 2017, and you sold it on December 31st, 2021, you will have earned an average rate of 18.55% in interest, not in interest, in gain, in earnings, or in appreciated value, we'll say, over that time period. That's 18.55% every single year. And that, my friends, is a crap ton of money, because if you look at the interest rate that you would earn if you put your money into a bank savings account during that time, if you're at a larger bank, you might earn 0.01%, 0.05% each year on your dollar. And the stock market would have returned to you 18.55% every year. That's a lot. That's a huge return. And it's not possible to have those kinds of returns every year. But it just so happens over this 5-year period, that was the rate of return. If you go back 10 years from 2021, and you start in 2012, the average rate of return was 16.58% each and every year. If you go back 20 years, it's 9.51%. If you go back 30 years, it's 10.66%. So you may ask yourself, well, what is the total historical rate of return for the S&P 500? Oh, and here it breaks down, just 1 year, right? So sometimes it's high, 26%. Sometimes you lose money, negative 6%. But overall, over these periods of time, this is your rate of return. And the overall, historical annual rate of return since the beginning of valuation in 1928 is 10.22%, or inflation adjusted, about 7%. So, if these numbers are new to you, then I hope you understand the power of these figures in terms of determining what you should do with your money. If your money sits in a bank, earning the rate of return that banks provide for savings accounts or checking accounts, it's basically earning nothing. If it's invested in the stock market, then depending on when you invested it, it may be earning, upwards of 26% per year. But on average, over the life of this index, S&P 500, since 1928, the average is 7%. Now, there are lots of ways to look at the data for the total stock market, but I think the net of this is that the stock market on average provides a pretty solid rate of return. And if you can stay in the market long enough to overcome the sort of cyclical, or maybe not even cyclical, but the sort of, the occasional or the random nature of when there's a good year and when there's a bad year, so that you don't have to, put your money in on January 1 at the beginning of a year that ends up being a year where the market loses 10%, and then you have to withdraw it at the end of that year. That's a problem, right? So what you want to do is keep your money in the market for as long as you reasonably can, so that you can ride through the negative, interest or negative earnings years, and benefit from as many of the good years as possible, so that you're getting close to the average rate of return that historically the market has shown it's capable of giving you. Now, the beauty of investing over long periods of time is the advantage of compounding interest, right? So when you have, let's say, $100 invested in the stock market, the money that you, or the increase in value that occurs will compound over time. So the stock market allows you to benefit from compounding interest, in the sense that if you, let's say it, over a period of time, it goes up 7% each year, and you invest $100 in the beginning of year 1. Well, at the end of that year, you will have $107 in value, because your $100 investment rose by 7%. Now, at the beginning of the second year, you'll have $107 in the market, and if the market goes up 7%, what you will have is 7% over. You'll have earned 7% of $107, and not $100, but $107. So I don't know what the exact number is there, but let's say you have $18 end of year 2, and then in year 3 it goes up another 7%. Well, then you've got 7% of that $118, not your original 100 or your 107 that you had at the end of the first year. So the nature of the stock market is that it pays compounded interest, in the sense that your earnings are earnings based on what you have at the beginning of each year. And generally speaking, if the market's going up, you'll have more at the beginning of year 2 than you did at the beginning of year 1, and more at the beginning of year 3 than you had at the beginning of year 2. So compounded interest is a very important principle that you benefit from if you have your money in the stock market. Now, you also get compounded interest with any investment that pays you an interest rate or gains on whatever the current, the amount of money in the account is at the time that the interest is calculated. But again, savings accounts, checking accounts at banks are, they pay very low interest. So you get compounded interest, but it's a very low interest rate. So there's not a lot of advantage there. And the advantage of an account at a bank, a savings account or a checking account, is that it's highly liquid, it's very stable, you're not going to lose your money, it's insured by the FDIC, and it's safe, right? It's safety over earnings, which is a good reason to have some of your money in those types of accounts. But your sort of nest egg, what you're using to build your retirement or your future savings on, should be in a higher a higher interest rate or higher rate of return type of account, and that's typically going to be some kind of stock or index or mutual fund, etc. And we'll talk more about those things in a bit. But if you look at this chart, which shows the value of an account or a savings, they call it, based on a couple of pretty modest presumptions that I put in here, starting points. So we start with an initial investment of $100 and a monthly contribution of $50, and the chart runs for 40 years with an interest rate of 7% and a variance of 2% shown with these upper and lower charts. So I think the red is 7%, yeah, and the little aqua color here is if the interest rate ends up being 5%, and then the blue here is if the interest rate ends up being 9%, right? So this is year zero. You have $100 that you put in. You haven't saved anything yet, so your value is $100. You go to year one, and you've put in the $100 plus the $50 a month for a year. So you've held that money, and then you have a little gain on that. So you've got 707 at 7%, and so on for year two, year three, year four. And what you'll notice is that up until about like year 12 or 14, things aren't going up very quickly. You're slowly building the value of this account. At year 14, you've got $13,788 in the bank from your initial $100 investment and your $50 a month addition to that. So, that's nothing to sneeze at, but you're not really benefiting from compound interest in a significant way, or in a way that, kind of blows your socks off. But starting at about year 14, 15, what you see is the shape of this curve is changing, and it's going up more and more quickly. And indeed, this 9% one, if you should happen to be invested in something that ends up earning 9% instead of 7%, it's going up very quickly. It's getting very steep. You're earning a lot of money in interest or in increased value every year. And the red one goes up, a little more slowly, but still, it's getting, to be where it rises a lot. And to get this significant increase, these larger increases each year in terms of dollars, right? You have to have started back here, and invested so that money is in this account and getting the benefit of that return for a long time. And when you're in there for 14, 15, 16 years, then you start to see very large gains in terms of dollars, because of the effect of compounding interest. You're getting interest upon interest upon interest upon interest, right? Every year that you're in here, you're getting more interest on the interest that you got before. So your gains, so the market or the bank or whoever is paying the interest or the increase in value, right, is giving you more based on the prior interest that you earned in the earlier years, the longer you go. So if we could stretch this out, and I'll do that, like 40 years is what I put in here, but if you start investing when you're, 16, and you plan to retire when you're 66, well, that's 50 years. And you can just see that this thing's getting darn near vertical, and look at this, 454,000 in year 49, you're 50, you're in 496, so you're making like $50,000 every year just in interest. And If you put this in for 60, 70 years, this thing would be going like crazy vertical, and you'd just be making a lot of money. A lot of money. Now, again, I want to point out, so this is like $500,000 this gets to. These figures are pretty conservative. And, I put this in here because I think the average person who, has any kind of disposable income, is not living simply paycheck to paycheck, can probably pull this off. And what would happen is, as you got further into your career, as you just became older and more experienced, you would have jobs that pay more, and you would have a little more disposable income. So you would increase this monthly contribution. And, maybe you could start off at $100 a month. If you're, so inclined, or you have the resources. And maybe by the time you're, 10 years into it, you'll be saving $500 a month. And then these things go really nuts. So actually, just for fun, let's see if I put in, like, what if we can afford $100 a month? Then we're going to have more that's getting, interest. Compounding is going to be more significant, and it's like $1 million you have by year 50. So the point is, you want to get this thing started as soon as possible, so you can get to that point where your money's been in there for 15, 16 years. And those $100 that you put in at year 0 are going to be, getting a lot of return, because they will have gotten a little bit of increase there, a little bit more increase on all that's come before here, a little bit more increase on all that's come before here, a little, and so on, right? This is how compounding interest works. This is why you have to get started early, because that $100 is going to be earning so much by the time it's in there for 20 years that, it's just really important to start that as early as you can. So, when I was starting out, I got my first job. I really didn't start saving for quite a while. I mean, the company I was working for had a 401k, and I put, what I think I sort of maxed it out, put whatever contributions I could in there. But other than that, I didn't really think about investing too much, other than like day trading Apple stock, which let's just say I sold at the wrong time for the most part. But, that day trading individual stocks is not necessarily the greatest idea unless you have a lot of time to put into that and to really learn, and, you have some risk tolerance. So, what I learned is that if I had just, as soon as I got my first real job, after I got out of school, if I just kind of put as much as I could in, 15, 20 years later, that money I put in at the beginning would be earning so much, so much in additional interest / value increase that it's a no-brainer to have put that in. But I didn't put it in. I didn't really think about this kind of stuff when I was starting my career. It's a bummer. I wish I would have. So the message is to start early and start, modestly. You don't have to put in $1,000 a month. You don't have to put in $100 a month. You don't have to put in $50 a month. The point is, whatever you put in after 15, 20 years is going to be, like rocket fuel to that compounding interest function. And I tell everybody who I meet that's like college age, they're like 18, 19, 20 years old. I'm like, boy, the dollars that you have right now are so valuable when you think about what they're worth after 20, 30, 40, 50 years of compounding. If you think about every dollar you have being worth like 10, if you just put it into, a reasonable investment, you're going to want to put as many of those as you can away. And hopefully young people have someone in their lives who can kind of give them that message. But that's my message to people. And even if you're 30 or you're 40 or 50, well, it's never too late to start that compound interest engine, um, moving and putting in money as far in advance of when you're going to want to pull it out of the market as possible. So, this blog I really like, and I've been, a fan of this one for, I've been reading this thing for like 10, 15 years, I think. There's a lot of personal finance blogs out there, and they're kind of the topics they cover are quite varied. This one is really focused on just, very practical stuff like savings accounts with the best interest rates, like credit cards that give you the best bonus offers to start. So a lot of credit cards will give you, like $1,000, $2,000 worth of, points if you sign up and you use, X amount of dollars, or if you spend X amount of dollars on them within like 3 or 6 months. And this is not a suggestion that you should run up credit card debt. You should absolutely not. I've had, credit cards since I was like a freshman in college, and I have never paid a balance, or I've never carried a balance. I've never paid any interest on a credit card in my entire life. So, I have signed up for a number of cards where I've just gotten a really nice bonus. I have business credit cards, and can easily spend, whatever the required amount is to get a bonus if I sign up for a business card. So, maybe you're a freelancer and you have business expenses, and you can pay for those on a credit card. Well, great. Sign up for one that gives you a nice bonus and pay off your balance every month. And, maybe you'll have $500, $600 of points to spend on something that can reduce your budget and allow you to save and invest more. So this site, My Money Blog, just kind of tracks deals on credit card sign-up bonuses, cash investment accounts that pay the best rates. Oftentimes these are sort of capped at like, $5 or $10 or $15,000, which is probably fine for most people. But if you could be earning 5.11%, for example, on your cash instead of, what like Bank of America would pay you, which is like 0.01%, then, you should do that if you need to have a cash account that you can put, money in that you're going to need in the near term. So I really like this blog. I've used this a lot. There's a lot of just kind of good, analysis about personal finance issues that I think is generally pretty, even keeled and reasonable. And if you don't like this one, this blog, then great. Find a personal finance blog that you do like, and just read it for a couple months and see what kind of stuff comes on there. See if it inspires you to take advantage of any of the kinds of offers or ideas that they talk about. I did want to speak just a second about the concept of personal budgeting, right? Because a lot of people don't really think about budgeting for their personal finances. And truth be told, I don't really budget, but I have, in different periods of my life, been, pretty good about tracking what I spend, putting it into categories, figuring out, how much I want to spend on food, how much I want to spend on entertainment, how much I want to spend on, computer gadgets and things like that. And if you are trying to build your wealth, trying to, achieve some personal savings, I think you probably have to do that unless you're, a computer engineer and you can immediately get a job of, earning $150,000, $200,000 out of college. But even if that's your case, you really should still budget, because, you're not going to know how much you can invest unless you figure out what you need to spend out of your monthly paycheck. So I put this site up because I always think about like food budgeting as something that we have probably more control over than other aspects of it. I mean, you have to pay your phone bill, you have to pay your car insurance, you have to pay your rent or your mortgage. Food is pretty variable, and a lot of people, I think, probably spend too much on food. If they, eat out a lot, or, buy very expensive meals. And a site like this is kind of fun because it shows you recipes especially with inflation these days. Boy, I tell you what, I mean, it's nuts out there. I feel like it's gotten a little better in the last month, but I remember, boy, looking at prices of stuff, because I don't generally look at prices all that much. I mean, I have my shopping lists, and I know what I need to get. I know the brands of stuff that I want, and I just put them in my cart. I do a lot of Instacart shopping, so I don't really pay attention to the price because I'm buying the same thing, a lot, and I know I've bought it before, so why would I check the price? But I was looking at prices of stuff, and man, everything was crazy, double what I remember it being the last time I paid attention. So anyway, so that sort of thing can, really challenge a budget. If you're not careful, you could spend $1,000 a month on food if you're not careful, or you can spend, $200 to $300, and you can eat very well, very healthfully, if you learn some cooking skills, and maybe do some meal prep, some weekly meal prep, where you're making 5 servings and put them in the fridge, kind of thing. So I just found the site just with a quick Google, but it shows you the the price per serving, and then it'll show you the the nutritionals and the calories of a meal, which is nice as well. So yeah, I really like this. This is pretty cool, but it can be quite fun to just try to budget and stick to that budget, and maybe even outperform your budget, and get your costs for various things down to some minimal level. Hopefully you don't have to sacrifice anything or go too nuts cutting things out to meet a budget. But if you really want to get that $50 a month in to your investments, there's lots of ways to work a budget so that you can move things around and spend less on some things, you're going to spend more on others, and so forth. And if you haven't had that experience doing that, I would certainly recommend trying to set up a budget. So let's say you decide that you do want to invest some money for future savings. Then the question is, well, boy, what should I do? Should I go down to my Schwab branch, or Merrill Lynch, or there's if you do have a job where you're earning 6 figures, like a software engineer, or doctor, or something like that, you will get lots of calls or emails from people who are at investment firms, and I would say 99% of the time, anybody who reaches out to you like that is probably somebody I would not recommend working with, because there are a lot of firms out there that make their money by charging you a percentage of the investments that they make, and that's usually a great way to get a pretty bad return. So anybody I know who's ever who's got any kind of expertise in investing, recommend staying far away from those kinds of advisors. And I think I would agree with that. But in today's day and age, there are some pretty interesting ways to invest your money to get a lot of the advantages of working with somebody who has expertise in how to build a portfolio of investments so that it's diversified and so that you get certain tax advantages, and so that you're, getting the kinds of gains that you want. And a lot of that work is like automated. It's done by algorithm, and there's a concept called robo advisors, which refers to, financial advice or financial advisory services, where the investments that they put you in, and the decisions to buy and sell which stocks and when are essentially made by an algorithm. And these days, big brokerages like Fidelity and Schwab, they have robo advisory services. But for a while there, maybe like, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, this was really a new concept, and there was a lot of disruption happening in the financial advisory industry. So companies like this one here, this is Wealthfront, whose webpage I'm on right now. I'll just show you their front page. These guys were one of the very earliest in this robo-advisory service, and I had heard about them because I work with a lot of tech companies, and I heard that a lot of the folks who were kind of the new wealthy of the West Coast, who had built tech companies and had a lot of money, or maybe they worked at tech companies and they had a high salary, were putting their money in Wealthfront or one of their direct competitors because they sensed that it was sort of the most efficient way to get the kind of diversified stock portfolio or investment portfolio that they could without paying a bunch of fees to some advisor who was going to charge them for the different investments that they made, and take a good amount of the possible earnings off their table. So the long and short of this Wealthfront is they basically take whatever money you put in there and they put it in a basket of different investments that some are international, some are local to the U.S., some are real estate, some are there's not much in cash, but there is a little bit of money invested in cash. Some are tax advantage, some are not tax advantage. So it's like a wide variety, and you can set, if you want to be really aggressive, because like you're 20 years old, you're not going to use that money for a long time. I think you do want to be aggressive in that case. Or maybe you're 50 and you're probably going to need that money, the next 10, 20 years. You can change, right, the setting for that, and they will adjust accordingly. Their fee is based on the total amount of money you have invested with them. So that's different than advisors who charge you, like a percentage of the investment that you make in a particular investment. That is sometimes called a load fee. It's generally higher than any sane person, who knows better would agree with. This fee is much smaller. It's 0.25% per year on all assets invested. So let's see, they do a calculation here. $100,000 balance as an example of a monthly fee of $20.55. So, there is a cost to this, but it is fairly low compared to alternatives. And the advantage of using Wealthfront is that you get a nice diversified portfolio without really having to know anything about how to diversify, what to do in terms of when you should sell certain stocks and buy others. And if you have a portfolio that's built from, let's say, 10 different categories or classes of investments, what you typically have to do is rebalance your portfolio every year, because certain of those categories will have risen in value more than others, and you want to have the same kind of percentage or ratio of one category to the whole. So doing that kind of thing each year or each quarter is not something the average person wants to do. Wealthfront and their competitors, I think, Betterment, I think, is one, do that all automatically for you. So you put your money in and you forget it. And, you look at your performance every year. So Wealthfront is one way to very easily and relatively cheaply invest money. I think they have like a referral program too, where you can get like $5,000 in the system for free. And then once your balance is over $5,000, then you start paying that 0.25%. But I'm not sure, so look around for information on that. Maybe you know somebody who uses Wealthfront. If Wealthfront sounds scary to you, or too, I don't know, a little more like complicated than you would like, these days we have access to mutual funds, or in this case, exchange traded funds, which are just basically investments that try to track the performance of the total U.S. stock market in a way that's highly automated, doesn't really involve a person making decisions. They just buy all the stocks in the stock market in accordance or in ratio to the cap, the total value of that stock in relation to the stock market. So what you really have is some blend or a portfolio of stocks that's truly representative of the stock market. This VTI is the ticker symbol, so the little abbreviation for the fund, this ETF. And this is one that I own. And the reason I like this one is if you look at the expense ratio, and you recall what the fee of Wealthfront was, their fee is 0.25%. The fee paid to the company that runs this ETF, which is Vanguard, is 0.03%. So if you invest in this, the only fees that will cost you for investing in this are 0.03% per year on whatever you have invested. That's an incredibly small cost to be invested in the entire stock market. So this kind of ETF, and there are mutual funds that are kind of similar to this, that try to emulate the performance of the entire U.S. stock market. And they're like, sometimes they're 0.07 or 0.08%. So this is just incredibly cheap. And, the U.S. stock market is what it is. It's going to return on average, that like 7%. I think the global stock market, the entire stock market in the U.S. like returns 10%. And the S&P is what we were looking at before, that returned 7% inflation adjusted. But you get that that sort of average return over the you don't get that. You are likely, or you are you have a good shot at getting that level of return. Maybe you get more, maybe you get less, right? But that's kind of historically what the stock market has provided. So if you want to get into the stock market for 10, 20, 30 years, you buy something like this, you're getting a very low expense rate, or cost fee for that. They have Admiral shares available of this. This is generally the same thing, but there's like a minimum purchase, and if I click on this, I think it'll tell us. Oh wow, interestingly, the fee is higher. Usually the fee is lower on the Admiral Shares version, but there's the $3,000 minimum. If we go back here, it's a lower expense ratio, and there's no minimum. You can buy, whatever, $100 of this if you wanted to. And this ticker symbol, so you would sign up if you wanted to invest in this. You would sign up at a brokerage. A very popular one is Robinhood. That's kind of a very sort of, how shall I say, it's aimed at, individual investors who have, relatively small portfolios, like kids in college or people who've, been in the workforce for like 10 years or less. Robinhood is very popular amongst young folks. So you could sign up, at Robinhood for free and just put in this symbol VTI and buy whatever you want, however much you wanted that. Every month you could buy $50 of it, and you would be invested in the total stock market of the United States at a very, very low cost. So that's probably the simplest thing you could do to get your money invested. And there's not going to be any surprise like fees, that kind of stuff. Nobody's charging you a percentage of what's invested other than this, expense ratio that just goes to Vanguard, in lieu of what would otherwise be returned to you. So, it's all quite simple. There's tons of other investment brokers out there. Like Vanguard itself has an online brokerage that a lot of people really like. It's been around for 1 million years. It's good quality. There's no fees that I'm aware of, just to sign up and buy stocks. Well, I should say a lot of brokerages will charge you like a one-time fee of like $10 or $15 when you buy a stock, but that practice actually has been becoming much less popular because there have been so many new brokerages that have come online, in the past 5-10 years that have not charged those fees that, most larger brokerages also do not charge per transaction. I remember when I first signed up for online brokerage, there was one called E-Trade. It's still around, but it was like one of the first internet brokerages. Otherwise, you had to go into an office somewhere or call people and tell them what you wanted to do. But E-Trade was one of the first fully online brokerages, and they used to charge like $15 or $20, I think, per trade. So every time you wanted to buy more of a stock or a ETF or a mutual fund, you had to pay $15 or $20. So if you were investing $50, you paid $15. Each time you got more, you would be losing pretty heavy, pretty quickly. So most brokerages do not charge a fee like that per transaction. I'm pretty sure Robinhood does not. Some may for certain kinds of mutual funds, but I think these ETFs are generally safe, and I'm pretty sure if you signed up with Vanguard and you bought one of their ETFs, they would definitely not charge you a fee. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. So anyways, I wanted to say something about that. Fidelity is another one that's very large. It's very easy to use. They have branches all over, but you could just go totally online. Last thing I want to tell you about is this online discussion forum called Boggleheads. Now, Boggle is the name of, I think, John Bogle, who is the founder of Vanguard. And he basically invented the concept of a mutual fund, and really revolutionized investing when he did that. But he has books out there, and adherence of his philosophy, which generally speaking seems to be, keep it simple, pay low fees, and get exposure to a broad variety of investment vehicles by, for example, getting a mutual fund, right? Which is tied to the price of a lot of different individual stocks instead of, picking one or two or three or four as winners, and then finding out like 2/3 of them are garbage, and you lost all the money you put in, right? So Bogleheads are, I guess, fans of John Bogle and his philosophy, and generally speaking, I think it's great. This forum is basically just a way for all these people who are Bogleheads, to talk about different ideas related to money, different investments. A lot of these people, I've noticed, follow a philosophy of like investing in 3 different funds, one of them being VTI, the other being a fund that like gives them international exposure, and then I think the third maybe being like a bond fund. And basically those 3 funds are all they ever invest in, and they do every year, they kind of adjust how much they have invested in each, so that the ratio is the same year over year, or at least at the end of each year. But other than that, they don't really do anything beyond that in terms of investing. Other people on this forum, they just like to have one investment. They're like ride or die with VTI. I just made that up, but that's kind of what a lot of people, they don't want to rebalance. They want to keep it all simple. They trust the stock market to provide a reasonable return over a 10+ year window, and they just put all their investment money in that one thing, which as long as the U.S. Maintains, which isn't necessarily a guarantee these days, but as long as it's still around, it's probably a reasonably safe thing to do, at least if you're looking at a 20 or 30 year time frame. Things can certainly go wrong in that time frame, but overall they will average out to give you, a reasonably solid return on your money. So this forum, I really love to just check in once in a while, see what they're talking about. There's also just, topics on like, should I sell my house? Should I, get this kind of IRA? Anything related to kind of like money or economics, is fair game on this discussion forum. So I think you have a lot of people who have done very well with their investing and done so in a very simple way, and like to share what they've learned. So I really like this discussion forum. I only discovered it like 4 years ago, but when I did, I was like, man, this is just really good stuff. So if you like to think about these kinds of things, you want to learn more, and or maybe what you can do, which I've seen people do, is go on this forum and like make a post introducing yourself, saying, here's what I make a year, here's what I have saved, here's the best I can figure for what to do going forward. What are your recommendations? And they'll tell you. Everybody will tell you what they would do in your situation, and that can be super helpful. I mean, obviously don't give them your personal information, but yeah, I don't know. Places like this, I think, are super valuable. Not really well known because, they don't advertise. That's right. This is basically just a non-profit operation. They don't even have any like, Google ads on here, I don't think. Yeah, so it's like crazy. This is PHP BB, which is a open source bulletin board. I know this because I'm sort of researching PHP, or I'm researching discussion forums for one of the sites that I use or manage. So, it's very simple, very old school, and highly recommend this as a kind of information source or an idea generator for you as you're thinking about trying to build wealth. So that's all I have for today. That was actually probably a pretty long video, but I hope you learned something. I hope this was useful. This is all information. You know, a friend of mine, family friend, who kind of was graduating college a couple of years ago, asked me for advice on what to do with his money as he kind of got ready to enter the workforce. And this is largely the kind of stuff that I told him and that I would tell anybody who is interested in building wealth. And I mean, if you do the things that I'm talking about here, and you just kind of try to be reasonable with your budget, put away what you can, slowly earn more as your career progresses. Hopefully, you don't have any big financial catastrophes like a run-in at the hospital, or an uninsured like house burning down or something like that. If you just kind of do the things that I'm talking about here, give or take, you can do quite well for yourself over a 20, 30, 40-year period. But the important thing is to keep it simple, get started early, and do the best you can with what you have in earnings. And if you do all that, I mean, you see all the time these people, like 80-year-old school teacher or 75-year-old janitor, gives like $3 million to the local church or school because they've just kind of kept a low profile, saved what they could, and that ended up paying dividends because they put money in the stock market over a very long period of time and just let it appreciate in value. So that's what I got. If you have questions, love to answer them in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. We'll catch you guys next time. Please do like and subscribe, and we'll see y'all next time on Randomly Relaxing. Bye now.